When you look back to the 2000s, Cartoon Network was a pretty experimental channel. I'm talking mid to late 2000s, right around when some of the old cartoon classics were coming to an end. This is a perfect subject for me because that was my generation. By that I mean I was born in 2004, so you might say I was too young to remember that phase of Cartoon Network with Squirrel Boy and Codename Kids Next Door, but au contraire, being a fat child who didn't really like to go outside much meant I spent plenty of time in front of the TV. I barely knew how to use the internet whatsoever, but on the rare occasion I chose to use it, I'd always be on Cartoon Network or Nick's site playing Flash games. My point is that I can talk about this, so kindly shut up. I'm always looking in the comments, you incels. Anyway, right before the weird, different side of Cartoon Network with Flapjack and Chowder ended for a while to produce, a big mistake, scratch that, the big mistake, we as an audience were graced with a new tune from our Canadian friends from across the border, the one that isn't talked about in the news all the time. The show was called Total Drama Island. The basic idea was that a group of 22 teen stereotypes would stay on an island for an imaginary reality TV show, akin to Survivor. The winner would get $100,000 if they became the last man standing among them. It was one of the first shows I regularly kept up with. The idea is pretty sound, having a group of characters who come and go as the writers wish, and with that plan they can choose who to develop more or less before that character gets taken off. There's a level of control beyond a live-action reality survival show. Not to mention being able to make fun of low-budget reality shows by getting the characters into much more dangerous or outrageous stunts than real people could ever commit. The crew might choose to use that for fart jokes, and since this is 2008, getting hit in the dick jokes half the time, but then we get characters fighting bears, jumping out of planes to land on futons, and sleep swimming up a waterfall in the middle of the night. It really gets pretty absurd sometimes. The outlandish stunts and situations weren't the only memorable aspect either, though the animation was kind of limited in what it could do, you know, being a 2000s Flash cartoon from Canada, a country that requires a certain amount of cartoons made per year, so we get trash like George of the Jungle half the time. The team did make some unique designs. Any professional character designer will tell you a good character is recognizable through their silhouette. You see, characters like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and Mickey Mouse are all incredibly recognizable, not only because they made good cartoons throughout several years, but also because their designs were incredibly unique and easy to point out. The early Ninja Turtles, for example, are almost impossible to tell apart based on shape alone. Rather, you have to rely on what weapon they carry. Shows like Foster's Home, or anything else by Craig McCracken, have mastered the silhouette design by giving clear features that only specific characters have. Total Drama is able to do this the right way by giving all the characters distinct body types to fit with their personalities. Some people are less inclined to them because of their simplicity, but I think sometimes less is more. You can clearly tell what these people are like just based on what their character design is. The characters weren't anything to laugh at either. By that I mean they weren't all one-dimensional, not that they couldn't get a laugh. I honestly love some of the interactions between the variety of characters. The host Chris is your typical survival show host with an added side of egotism and cynicism you know that they all have, but they aren't really blatant about. He makes most of the challenges on the show specifically for his own enjoyment and only really cares about entertaining himself. That might sound like a flaw, but nah, Chris is probably the funniest thing on the show. The way he just doesn't give a shit is inherently funny to me. Almost every other character got to expand beyond their stereotype as well, if they stayed on long enough. Gwen the Goth Girl got plenty of development as an actual person beyond just being gloomy. Courtney the Control Freak gave us moments of her wanting to revolt. Even the bad boy Duncan showed he had a sensitive side. In the 26 episodes we're given, the pace never feels too fast for us to care about who might be taken off next. Building character and motivation are the keys to having a good story-based show where they're slowly taken off. That's why Danganronpa works so well. They give you time away from the story to just have the characters learning about each other and how likely they are to betray one another. Why do you think people hate Ezekiel? It's because we never get to expand on his character, or what he's like, or why he became this way. He's always the first one taken off, so he's usually just, a joke. A really bad joke. A dumb joke. A joke that should have ended a long time ago. Please end it. In the end, TDI was a major hit, and with that came the word every fanboy at Comic-Con fears. Sequels. Total Drama is known very well for not just being a single season. In the beginning, they reused the same characters for the second season. Not that I was necessarily complaining, they were still fun to watch and gained different dynamics, but something about it just wasn't quite as great as the original. Then after that, to spice things up, they started adding new characters for each season. The problem with that being Total Drama's original season had 22 teen stereotypes. Teen stereotypes are not that easy to think of after a while. The fourth season was the first to have an entirely new cast, and it was fine. Several of the characters could easily be compared to the first seasons. Joe is basically Eva, but she's around longer. Cameron is like Cody, but I'd be lying if this season didn't have its own highlights when it came to characters like Zoe and Mike and Don, who I really liked. Then the next time they tried to do this with an entirely new cast, Total Drama made the worst season of their entire series. It was clear in the fourth season they were struggling to make new characters that stood out on their own, or were even teen stereotypes. They only had 14 characters because obviously thinking of another 22 would have been a lot of work. I still think they were a ton of fun in the time that we got with them, and while not as fleshed out as the original, they really tried to make them likable at least. Characters like Mike, who had to deal with his identity crisis, and Zoe, who was a survivalist type, were incredibly enjoyable, like I said before. Now, before I say what the worst season of Total Drama is, and I think anyone who's watched the series knows, I'd like to mention Total Drama-Rama is non-canonical and therefore doesn't qualify. I know I'm the only person who cares about this kind of continuity, you know, for Total Drama, but if I have to waste my life caring about that, then you have to watch it! The worst season of Total Drama is Pahkitew Island. It's the 6th season in the series, and I should hate it simply for having that numerical. How are you supposed to even pronounce that? The show itself isn't very good either. To put it simply, I just plain don't like the cast, which is the most important thing in one of these shows. Think about it. If you watch a reality TV show, something that is made or broken based on if the people involved are worth watching, having bland, dumb, forgettable characters is the worst sin a show like that can have. I only liked 3 characters in the show. That's how few of them even left an impact on me. I could go through everything wrong with each character I dislike in detail, so I will. Starting with the most forgettable character of the entire Total Drama series, Beardo. He makes noises. I have described his entire character to you. There is nothing else to say about this man. He is the same as that one cop from the police academy. The strong/smart and silent type already existed with the character B from Revenge of the Island. Is Beardo either of those things? I don't know. Thankfully, he is the first one gone. Leonard. He is a reference to a Triumph the Insult Dog interviewee. I appreciate the reference, but this guy is one of the most annoying, stereotypically dorkish characters in the entire series. His voice alone turns me off from him. Max. He's dressed like frickin' Dr. Evil, because of course he is. He's the stereotypical mastermind who isn't actually competent at what he does at all. As far as I'm concerned, he's nowhere near any kind of teen stereotype, so there's no excuse for him even being here. Insert obese Kokichiyama reference here. Sugar. She's Honey Boo Boo slightly grown up. Have you ever wanted to watch a parody of Honey Boo Boo mess around with the other characters and have no development despite being in the final 3? I say parody loosely because she just acts as Honey Boo Boo would and doesn't really contribute anything to any sort of commentary or nuance beyond fart jokes. Ella. She is a Disney princess wannabe. She always wants to sing and have everyone get along. She's on par with the princess from Enchanted when it comes to how good of a parody she is. That being not much. She does what a princess would do, and that's the extent of her character. She sings to birds, she talks fancy, and she's too nice for her own good. Amy and Sammy. They are the evil twin trope. I'm not one to say if a character starts off stereotypical, they can't be entertaining or more beyond that stereotype, but these girls, they are the embodiment of a dumb cliche that should have died off by now. Topher. He wants to be Chris. Like really badly. Like a ton. Have you figured out he wants to be Chris? I need to let you know again for the 30th time. Rodney. His entire character is just that he falls in love with every girl he comes into contact with, and he's from a farm. He's annoying. Scarlett. She be smart. And she be evil, apparently. The show doesn't care, so why should I? Dave. Oh, Dave. He sucks hard. Before making this video, I had a look at the Total Drama community that I recently found exists, and they all seem to have a dislike for Dave. I didn't even know what to expect from him, but I realized why he's so hated. He is the whiniest brat ever. I understand where they were going with his character, a germaphobe with emotional issues, but they already did a better version of him with Cameron, who they were able to make not whiny. Dave just doesn't shut up about how dirty and filthy everything is. He's supposed to be the straight man to the crazy behavior of the other contestants, but he complains about how they act so much that he just comes off as annoying. He wasn't terrible, though. That is, until the finale for the season came around. He goes entirely off the rail. Because Sky has a boyfriend back home despite wanting to be with Dave and also wanting to break up with the boyfriend, he basically tries to kill her and is happy when it looks like he does. Yeah, I hate him now. Boycott Dave, please. The only characters left are Sky, Sean, and Jasmine. Sky is just not unbearable. She's the most generic character type and looks the least distinct among the entire cast. Sean is a guy who always thinks the apocalypse is coming. I only like him since he's a reference to a
movie I enjoy, and he has the majority of the few funny lines this season. Jasmine is just tall girl and Australian. She's fine. Her trust issues with Sean seem too easy to trigger. He makes one mistake and she says she'll never trust him again. Chef is barely in the show when he was much more of a prominent character before. I just wish he was utilized more. Chris is much more cynical, to the point he gets a little bit unbearable sometimes. Like on one occasion the island is about to explode and he really only cares that he gets out of there alive. He may have been incredibly harsh and ready to get the cast into dangerous situations, but he cared if they were about to actually die. I still like him for the most part, but something about how he went so much farther with his actions makes me like him a little bit less than I did in previous seasons. I didn't like the drama in Total Drama for this season either. Do you know why? Because to be able to like or care about the characters involved, you have to know them first. We got a little bit of development on the basic level for the characters, but for the most part, no one really changed their character for the better or much at all throughout the season. It felt like through every episode I was still in the first. Characters are eliminated and taken off, and their dynamics slightly change every few episodes, and all I can say is,
you know what's weird? I already don't miss him!
If I can't make an emotional connection with the character, why should it matter to me which one is taken off next if I barely noticed they were even there to begin with? I don't care who's gonna win the finale, who gives a shit? What personality do they have, or aspirations to try and move toward? I only like Sean because he's kind of funny. He doesn't have much of a personality beyond always trying to survive a zombie attack that won't happen. Gwen from the original series had the want to go back to college if she got any money, and Owen just wanted to have a big party and make everyone happy. One might clearly be more ambitious than the other, but we've gotten to know these two over 26 episodes and enjoy them inside and out. 13 episodes is barely long enough for a show with 14 characters to try and flesh out, is what I would say if they couldn't do it, and yet we have Revenge of the Island. Revenge of the Island is a much better sequel series with much better characters we get to know more beyond their stereotype, and I still remember most of the characters even though it's been years since I've seen it. Pahkitew just did it worse. There isn't any excuse when they did it better beforehand. Speaking of which, something you may have noticed if you watched each Total Drama season is that they each have different themes and ideas to make the plot more interesting. The first season is vanilla with Camp Wawanakwa, the second has the characters on or in movie situations, World Tour has them sing and go across the globe, Revenge of the Island is about the original island being mutated from radiation, and so on. The point of this season was that after Wawanakwa sunk in the previous one's finale, we'd be given a new cast of a new island with new problems. Definitely doesn't sound like the most unique of their concepts, but this season has the added bonus of the island mostly being artificial. As far as I could tell though, this didn't have any effect on the plot until over 2/3 of the way through. Until then, Jasmine just randomly keeps pointing out, I'm pretty sure there was a tree here. This mountain is looking suspiciously out of place. Oh hey, the sun is being eclipsed by all the subtle foreshadowing I'm giving. The idea of the island being mostly artificial gives way to so many possibilities the writers chose to ignore for, I guess, being able to have a moment where Scarlet snaps and tries to be evil and get the money or let the island blow up. I wish they'd been more upfront about it from the beginning instead of just waiting to tell us. Think about all the ways Chris could have made the game more interesting. He'd totally want to use that before the last few episodes. I'd certainly be more entertained because watching these guys on their own is mostly just boring. The entire season just reeks of untapped potential and badly executed ideas. Almost all of the characters had the ability to be good or slightly complex. Okay, maybe half, but my point still stands. The island itself had the potential to make the characters interact in creative ways we haven't seen from the Total Drama franchise, but it's criminally underused for most of the season. They seemed to spend too much time trying to make jokes that ended up not being funny, rather than engaging its audience with the personalities we had to spend multiple hours with. They were mostly unlikable or irritating, or Dave sucks! In the Dramaverse, this is my personal pick for the worst season of Total Drama. And what is the best season? Well, it's World Tour, no contest. What are you, dense? Will I make a follow-up talking about the best season to offset the negativity of this video? Possibly. You know how I am with sequels. Play me off, Johnny.